Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today, on the Practical Preservation Podcast, we are at White Chimneys in Lancaster County with Jessica Meyer and her father. And I'm sorry, I can't remember your first name. I can't remember your first name.
Jack.
I was thinking Jake, and then I was like, no, that's not right. And then I was like, I just need to make a public confession.
There's too many Jakes and Jessica's around.
So anyway, that's my public confession for that. So anyway, so thank you for having me. Tell me about your background.
Well, I wanted to start with my father, Jack. We've been here at White Chimneys for about 15 years, 14 years. And it wasn't, buying a property like White Chimneys is something you aspire to do. And then one day when it happens, it's a little overwhelming at times. So I have a love of history, of historical accuracy that has started in my childhood, and my father had a lot to do with that. So I'm going to let Dad step in here and say a few words about how he began his love affair with history and preservation.
Well, my family settled in Pennsylvania, what became Pennsylvania, shortly after or around 1626 down here in what is now Delaware. And my first great-grandfather, which would be great-great-great-great, was born there in 1637. Now, he's buried in a little churchyard over on the other side of Philadelphia in New Jersey. So the family was here a long time and spread out. And I grew up oddly enough, coincidentally enough, in a little house that had no foundation. It was built on logs near a river. And I had a grandmother, my mother's mother, that's the side of the family that's been here so long, who encouraged me when I took a liking as an 8 or 9 year old to history, to older things. And I remember the first thing that she helped me get, I bought for $10 back then, about 1954, was a spinning wheel, a big wool wheel. Yeah. So I have a lot of the things that I got as a young person, I still have. And I just developed that interest. I developed an interest in history and in general, and of course now you'd say preservation, because I do know how to do a lot of those things. Yeah. I'm currently restoring the fireplace in the older part of the house here in the cabin, cabin part. So yeah, I've had an interest in that and was encouraged in that since I've been a young person.
And I think that a lot of people, at least when I talk to people in that are interested in history and preservation, it's usually something that they've always been interested in. It's not something that they came to, later. It's something that has always been an interest, and they've wanted to learn more. So I think that's that's important to them to have such a long connection to the country too. I think makes a difference. So you bought White Chimneys as a property, which is celebrating its 300th anniversary this year. So the original part, what they're calling the cabin, was 1720 with additions then built around it. Did you buy the property with the intention to restore and preserve it? Was that your intention?
I did. I really like that. I just hobby at that.
Mm-hmm.
I call it hobby at it all the time. I love to do that better one.
It certainly was a property that we knew needed a lot of TLC.
Mm-hmm.
It had not been occupied for different portions of this century, actually, but it was a little overwhelming. We didn't know where it was going to go. I feel very strongly that we wanted to share it with the community. It is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. The Historic Preservation Trust has an easement here. So of course we knew that when we purchased the property, it was part of the deed. So we weren't sure where it was going to take us. We were just going to live here. We never wanted to do a bed and breakfast. And that's, I still feel pretty strongly about that. So it will never be a bed and breakfast. But literally what happened a few years down the road, we thought we'd have a pumpkin patch. Maybe we'll do some hay rides. Turns out we're not so good at growing pumpkins.
Oh no.
Grow anything else, but maybe it's bad. But it was all those little things that kind of led us along, and people would just pull the driveway. We still had a pretty high level of interest just from the public or people driving by. And I will never forget, one day someone is standing there and asking, "Oh, can we take our wedding pictures here? Oh, can we come in the barn and have a reception here?" And I was flabbergasted, couldn't believe that someone would like to stand there in the tobacco barn.
Right.
It was in shambles. It did not look like it does now. But that was just the very beginning. And as we led ourselves along, just making the garden flow, fixing the landscape. There were trees in the 4 squares, full trees.
Right.
So we had to do a lot of re-landscaping. Again, I'm passionate about historical accuracy. So our interest was really to make it as it was intended, or the original design. There was a lot of concrete here. We jackhammered out concrete, put back original cobblestones and Belgian block. Electric lines, that was also one of the first things.
Did you bury them?
Yeah. They're all underground.
Yeah.
That was our first major project when we moved here. That would have been January of 2007. The 7-month process working with PP&L.
Yes.
Underground, getting everything off the road. They had to put a new transformer in off the road, and then of course reroute everything into the house. So some of those things, just redoing the infrastructure was huge. And and then the well pump went.
Oh no.
So we had to put a new well pump in, and then we had puffback with the furnace. We had to get a new furnace. So
there was
the first couple, we had.
Were you starting to question your decisions?
I was living. We've all seen the movie Money.
Right.
I mean, it was overwhelming. But as we got those major things out of the way, and then we started to get to the cosmetic things, and we just all the way up to just this past 6 months ago, you were involved helping us get a brand new cedar shake roof on the house, which I don't know when it was replaced last. Probably the 50s or 60s is what I would suspect. So we're very excited about that. That was a major project.
Yeah, this this side of the house, the older part, what I call the cabin in the 1718 edition. It was a shambles. It was not habitable, and so I just assessed the whole thing. The first floor here where we're sitting, the floor sagged. You could dump a 5-gallon bucket of water on the floor and it would just go in the middle.
Yeah. Oh, no. So it was actually like
Oh, yes.
sunken in the middle.
The fireplace hearth had collapsed at some point, and they had just covered, they had poured concrete over that. So I uncovered all the stoves,
Right.
and then I just decided, since both of the main beams in the house on this side were broken, and the ceiling sagged, which was the upstairs floor sagged, I took everything out. You could stand here on the first floor and look at the bottom of the shingles up on the third floor.
Yeah.
So I took everything off, and I replaced what needed to be. I put sisters on. I kept all the original beams, replastered the walls, and just basically rebuilt the house pretty much like it was. And I ran a conduit from in the corner of one of the rooms here, from the cellar all the way to the attic, an 8-inch industrial electrical conduit, Schedule 80.
Yeah.
So when I did that, I put portals in there, and I brought water and electric out to all the rooms, because this side of the house only had one knob and tube running through here, and that wasn't safe.
No.
So I really have enjoyed that. I discovered things along the way, in the old side and the cabin side. For instance, at one point, I guess around 1830, they added a federal style stairway in here.
Okay.
What was there prior to that was a door in the wall where you would climb up a sort of a ladder, which is very typically Dutch European construction.
Right.
So I'm looking at that side of the house and saying, hey, this was really early.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody homesteaded here before there was even William Penn had said, let's have a little land office. You get your ticket. Later on, you'll get your deed, or patent.
Yeah.
And it's just been, to me, that's high adventure.
that
was high adventure.
That was the frontier. The beams that were broken, were they? I guess they weren't cut to put plumbing in, because if there wasn't plumbing on the side.
The problem with the beams were they were 8x8s, and the original builders had cut in 5 inches. So all that was really holding the center part on both sides of these buildings was 3 inches of lumber.
Oh, goodness.
And I guess they took whoever was living here at the time at some point had taken the partition walls out. And
So
when
they
that
lost their
happened over
support.
a period of time, the beams actually cracked and broke, and the house settled. And it made a real construction project, reconstruction project.
And the reason I asked is because typically, like especially in early colonial buildings, then the Victorians would have cut the beams to put plumbing in for bathrooms and things like that, and then you have that issue later on. So that's why I was curious, but maybe it was just bad construction. they didn't have building permits.
No, they didn't. There was no such thing as that.
So the building was built in multiple phases. So the earliest is 1720, and then 1780.
Well, the earliest documented is 1720.
Okay.
But it's very obvious this cabin
Was used
is much
earlier. Yeah. And then
then they added on in 1718 or 1720 here.
Okay.
The construction of the cabin is typically continental European, like German or Dutch, maybe Swedish. And this addition here, the cabin had the door on the side where you walk into the kitchen. This addition here has a door in the middle, absolutely English.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. More balanced. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then is there one other edition in the 20s and the 90s? Okay.
Actually,
Two more?
So-
Okay.
So the third addition to the house
Well,
was
there's-
1807.
1807.
Okay.
And that was the half of the front, which faces south.
Yes.
And then the next addition would have been 1923, which is on the west side of the house.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of just built like all around the original.
Yes, yes. Kind of an L-shaped type of thing. There's porches the whole way across the front, which face south, and then porches on the length of the east side as well.
And before we got started, we kind of were chatting about the is it an Italian style garden? Is that the garden?
So yes.
Yeah.
It would be what you could call an Italianate garden. Obviously, the French have quite a few of these gardens as well. I love the French influence. The Marquis de Lafayette, or General Lafayette, as we know, is rumored to have stayed here in 1825.
Well, he did stay here.
I don't think it was just a rumor. I think it was actually documented.
There's lots of rumors about this place.
Yes, lots of rumors, but the question in our minds is, the year is 1825. Our country is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Right.
President Monroe extends an invitation to Lafayette. Now, 50 years prior was our Revolutionary War.
Right.
Lafayette was 18. He was, suddenly thrown into the war by his own choice.
Right.
He wasn't exactly coerced, but he became a very lifelong friend of George Washington, and Washington putting him in charge of some of the units. And of course, without the French financial backing,
Right.
who knows what we would be speaking today. Certainly the languages were influenced as well.
Yes.
But so Lafayette was invited 50 years later to come back to the Americas and have a victory lap. And he took a whole year to do this.
Oh, really?
He was in Louisiana as well. So there's quite a few areas that he did travel during that year. So the question in our minds has always been, if he did stop and stay here, why here? Was this just the place to be in 1825?
Right.
Or what's the likelihood that they were wintering at Valley Forge?
Right.
And it's highly likely they were here and marched right by here.
Yeah.
Well,
So
when he returned, which was 1824, because of course, you had to get on the ship and sail over. So when he returned, the idea of his trip was that he would revisit all the places that he had been during the Revolution. So that was what I would call a big tip-off to the fact that at some point he had during the Revolutionary War, and he was very close by.
Right.
Probably stopped here,
Right.
or came here for whatever reason. Maybe he did stay here, but he came and he stayed here at least a week back in 1824 or 5. Benjamin Franklin is supposed to have slept here and left this little addition was an inn and a tavern. The folks who owned the property back then at that time also owned the stage line that went from Lancaster to Philadelphia.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So Franklin had written an IOU to the innkeeper. So we know that he was here.
Right.
We know the president of Princeton was here on his way to get away from the British. And it's very likely that many of the since this was the last stage stop on the way to Lancaster.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was actually, as you were talking, I was
Yep.
thinking that would be a nice trip to
Yep.
Lancaster from here. And then how many, like there must have been another at least stop between here and Philadelphia.
About the
Yeah.
average every 10 miles.
Yeah.
So we're 13 miles from
Yeah.
city center. Most of the signers is Declaration of Independence. Most of the Continental Congress people would have stopped here.
Right.
I had asked years ago, the president of the Lancaster County Historic Preservation.
Mhm.
How would we be able to know who stopped here? And he laughed. He said it would be easier to know who didn't stop here because everybody stopped here.
Right.
So that's really exciting.
Mhm.
We had a gentleman here, a writer from England, who I'm not sure which magazine or article he was writing, but it was a historical article, who had done quite a bit of research, which at the time, I mean, logically, of course he should have, but at the time it surprised me. He said, really, when you consider this place and as old as it is,
Mhm.
and the fact that Penn came here to meet the Indians about signing his treaty, he says America was born in your front yard. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that very much.
And it's definitely it ties the building, and the building as like a witness to all of this history. And now your stewardship is allowing that to, because it wasn't in good shape when you got it.
We
so
definitely need a time machine to fit here. And this room here, which was the inn, and there was what's the kitchen now with the bar room.
Yes.
And or just be a mouse in the corner.
Oh yeah, definitely. So you've kind of, not exactly, but you're currently you live here, but then you also have, it's not an inn, but you have a venue for events. And so can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So we were speaking of the gardens, and indeed the gardens were extensive. I keep adding more sections, and we'll always be committed to that. I'd love another set of fountains. I think it's time. It's been like 150 years since we had new fountains, so let's add another set. So we'll see what happens. But yes, as we went along, suddenly we had an interest in just passerbys or people, starting to see pictures and saying, hey, that's a nice place. We can get our wedding pictures taken there in between wherever they were going, the church and the reception hall. And of course, weddings have changed a little bit in the last 15, 20 years. We've definitely seen an interest in historic estate weddings. We're not going to the fire hall or the country club or the crystal ballroom anymore.
Right.
They're definitely going out. This is part of the millennials. The millennials are looking for an experience. Right. So I am passionate about creating an experience that, of course, they're interested in. We are very well known for working with each couple individually and being able to customize their dreams, really pull out what it is that has attracted them or what it is that they're looking for. I have found so many themes here at the White Chimneys property. Mm-hmm. There are formal French themes. There are rustic garden themes. We talked about the different centuries, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. What is it that's attracting them? I'm finding that there's not one couple that wants there's so much you can't even get every single part of it in your wedding day. So we definitely kind of hone in, what do you want to be out in the field and take pictures with the horses? Do you want that formal elegance in the front yard, the symmetry? Is that what you're attracted to? So it's really an opportunity for us to promote historic preservation that way as well. Every single one of our tours begins with a little history lesson. We tell them why we exist, why we're here, because we are different than the country club. That's not our focus. So we're very, very excited about that. I feel that we've grown and expanded our preservation efforts based on our tours and our level of interest. This is our 13th year now doing weddings. It is not what it was when we started. Originally when someone asked if they could come and take their wedding pictures, we're like, oh sure, no problem, come on over. Now I need an appointment. I need to know when they're coming. We really give a lot of direction. When we added restrooms in the tobacco barn, approximately 2008, we thought everything would be fine. But,
Right.
you know, someone unfortunately has to empty the trash and clean up
Right,
after all of that.
yeah.
So we had a whole nother business and a whole nother issue to take care of. So we realized that weddings and bathrooms don't just happen themselves. Someone actually has to come in and provide some direction.
Right.
So from that aspect, the more that I stepped in and helped bring the wedding to fruition, we attend to every detail. It really has an incredible outcome.
And I think I was thinking back to when I was in college, right out of high school, I was a banquet server at the Eden. So when you said the crystal ballroom, I was having flashbacks. I was thinking about and I've talked about it, I believe, on the podcast before, but the idea of doing two things. So like, if you're, at least from me, from a preservation standpoint, if I have a choice of like, I'm looking for a venue, I try to find one that is historically based also. So then we're helping promote the history of that property, but we're also helping to preserve it through the money that we're paying. So, and I think that you probably attract people that's important to them.
Yeah. Another thing, obviously, we don't have a license. The way we handle alcohol for weddings is that we have a bartending service vendor, ramp certified and insured. So basically, the couples bring their own alcohol. It's considered BYOB,
Right.
but the bartending service takes care of it. One of the things that we really encourage them to do is to make a signature drink. We are still zoned residential ag,
Right.
so we have it. We've added the French potager garden, so we have all our vegetables laid out with the herbs as well.
Yes.
This is not just a random herb garden. This
Right.
is a formal French herb garden. So we will sit with the couples, we'll bring them back for planning visits. We use rosemary, lavender, thyme, sage, mint. We'll help them create a signature cocktail with an herb we just go pick while they're watching.
Yes.
And they just love it. This is the experience that we're talking about. So now, you know, not only did they come to the historic estate, they're drinking and celebrating with herbs right there.
Grown, yeah.
20 feet away. And their minds are just blown.
Yes.
They just can't imagine that. So that's one of the ways that, again, everything we do, we try to find some way that, as you mentioned, being a steward and having a sustainability that we're really looking towards the future. And this generation of millennials, and how do we capture everybody?
Yeah.
You know, we've got 4 young children here that are growing up, and they're already passionate about it. They can't imagine living anywhere else, and you know, and I know that they will be excellent stewards in the years to come.
I agree, and I think that's part of that exposure early on, and the value system. It is values too. So I know that we're going to talk a little bit with the HVAC guy about the air infiltration system, but you already have been, well, we can talk about, you know, why we're talking about it in relation to everything that's going on, but then you've installed it in the main house. So I just want to hear your experiences with it.
So obviously, modern amenities. There's this concept of HVAC or central air. We've done several things through the years. On the heat side, there was just a single oil furnace, and when we purchased the property in 2006, so it is now all propane. So we've done a complete conversion. Obviously, much cleaner. We don't have the odor. The house is all hot water radiators, so but it's run on propane. So from the heating aspect, I feel like we finally got that.
Oil's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. HVAC. So in the house portions, there was a central air that was installed approximately in the year 2000. So we're already at 20 years.
Right.
When my father did the repair to the beams in the 1700s portion, as he was speaking of, there's different kinds of ductwork, and bottom line, the ductwork was not installed with the proper R value and to a manner that, as it was sitting in the 3rd floor eaves, it would sweat, and then
Right.
of course we got black mold in the ductwork. So this was discovered last year, 2019,
Oh my
and
goodness.
we
Yeah.
discovered that we needed to do a complete replacement of this ductwork ASAP for his health.
Right.
So got in touch with a local company who is passionate about preservation and really quality work. So he's going to speak a little bit
Yes.
more about this. We had some technical issues joining him right now, but he makes custom ductwork. And last year that was a high urgency to replace this system for my father. One of the things that he had done, and I guess I didn't really realize last year, he explained the whole system and what he was doing, and we said, hey, that looks great.
It's technical.
Yes, it's technical, it looks great, it looks safe, it's pure, and all of a sudden now this year we have this thing called Corona, and it's been a whole new topic. So one of the things that he did in this 1700 section is installed an ultraviolet light. The company that he uses is called Remy, and I'm sure you can post the links to their website and all that.
Yeah.
There are many companies out there, but this is the one that Jake is familiar with. Obviously, the concept is for air purification, mold, spores, even there's other bacteria, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas, all sorts of bacteria.
And pollen and
pollen.
dander and dust. Yeah.
Yes, that certainly. I didn't mention that one of the other things I do in life is be a nurse practitioner.
You have multiple jobs. I know how that is.
So I really have put in the medical world and understand this concept with COVID-19. Looking at the research studies that are out there, they're using ultraviolet light in hospital systems, in school systems. I will caution you, there are different grades to the ultraviolet light,
Right.
so please make sure if you are looking to install these systems that they are the proper wattage. As a rule of thumb, something I say, basically, if it's not safe to look at it with your eye, then it's good. Then it's strong enough to kill COVID-19.
Yeah.
I see these light wands and these handheld devices. I will never purchase one.
Right.
I don't think they're strong enough. I don't think they do anything.
Right.
So just kind of look at it that way. If it's not safe to look at it with your naked eye, then it's probably doing its job. It's probably killing COVID.
Yeah.
So so we did that was done in the house last year, and this year I talked to Jake and I said, listen, okay, we really need these lights in all of our systems because this is cutting edge, this is revolutionary. And obviously in the tobacco barn, which is now renovated, when we did the tobacco barn renovations 2014, put air conditioning in and boilers. No, we didn't consider ultraviolet light.
Nobody was thinking we needed it.
Thinking about that. So we're very, very excited to say that the ultraviolet lights are now installed in the tobacco barn, and the guests can. It's just one extra level of comfort, for them.
In addition to all the other protocols that you're
following.
Yes,
we have to follow all the protocols that we possibly can. We're finding a lot of brides and grooms have different levels of comfort. Some of it's based on mostly their own personal experience. Some of them have grandparents that are attending. Some of the grandparents are no longer here. If there's any other health issues, and of course we have 10.3 acres, so we feel very strongly we can adequately social distance if people don't want to be inside. We have multiple restroom facilities as well, so we're excited about moving forward here post-COVID.
or through it.
We're not really post-COVID, I should rephrase that. We're definitely,
we're trying to figure out our
new normal. We're still in the trenches.
Okay. Well, do you, just from your experience with this property and as you're looking, do you see any challenges or trends in preservation?
Challenges will always be that by the time you finish one thing, it's time to turn around and do it again.
Right.
You and I were just looking at the windowsills in the front of the house before we started the recording here. And I could swear we painted them once already since we've been here.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure we did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just amazing, the constant level of maintenance that literally by the time you get to one thing, it's time to come around and do it again.
Yeah.
Another big thing that we've had to address and fix has been stormwater.
Oh, yeah.
As you know, there were a lot of different gutter styles that we noticed last year. So we really found an excellent company and put the half rounds on everything.
Yeah.
And
Has that helped?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, they're beautiful. And
Right.
we also did gutter guards on them. It was just, it cost a little more, but we just really felt strongly that we needed to do this. And to have some continuity, we found a company that was the other thing, finding a company that we could stand by and say, hey, yes, we're going to come back to you for the next part of this project. Which I guess I could tell Father now that they're going to be doing the garage in 2 weeks. The gutters.
The gutter?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
So putting half rounds on the
Yes.
old carriage, we call it the garage, but it is the old carriage house. It's a 3-car garage, but the carriage house now. Yeah, it has actually full carriages.
It has carriages.
What am I talking about? We don't put cars in our garage, we put carriages in them. So,
One of the things that, as far as preservation, long term, that I would have a concern for, of course, is creating an interest in young people. I'm a great proponent of teaching history in public schools. It's my impression that that has kind of been let go by the wayside to some extent.
Yeah,
in the last years.
I've heard that too, because that always seems strange to me now. And then I have to remember how long I've been out of school. But it seems strange to me because, like, my senior year, I wasn't taking any math, I wasn't taking any science, but I was going to need that. So I loaded up my schedule with history classes. But somebody said because of the shift to STEM and all the focus on math and science that they're not. But they're still teaching history. It's just not that's not the focus. And I think that it is important. And I think there are families that are still, taking their children to historic sites and things, but it's not, that's probably the exception, not the rule.
yes, it's definitely the future generation will always be a concern. And
Right.
we live in a great school district, I think, that has a great relationship with some of the local GoTech schools where they're able to really get right into trades and get credits for starting those trades. So I think it's also, I was very happy to hear that some of the districts do have some flexibility in different studies. Based on the population in attendance.
And I think that's important too. I think for a long time there was a push that you don't want to go into trade. You want to, go to college and get a job where you don't have to, that you work in an office or do something. And my husband started working with my father. He was going to school for accounting, which I can't imagine him being an accountant now, but we started dating. My dad wanted to know where he was most of the time. So he's like, come work with me for the summer. And Jonathan never left. Yeah. So anyway, is there anything that you wanted to share that we didn't get a chance to cover? Okay, very good. Well, how can someone get in contact with you if they're interested in the venue or anything else?
So being a wedding venue, there are images literally everywhere.
Okay.
Number one, of course, we have a website, which is whitechimneys.com. And we have Facebook. That was our first taste at social media, so they can look on Facebook and message that way. We have Instagram. Instagram is definitely a little more artistic flair, but there's a lot of media there. And we even opened a TikTok account a couple months ago. That is something I did get the children involved. So we have different flavors on each of our social medias, but we're having a lot of fun with the TikTok accounts. Yeah. The children like to prance around in the garden and do fun, sparkly.
That's fun.
Sparkly clips.
Yeah. Okay, well, very good. I will make sure that those are also on our website where the podcast gets posted, so that somebody can go there and then find you from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
So this is the second part of our White Chimneys podcast. We have Jacob Shoemaker with us from Shoemaker HVAC. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. When I was at White Chimneys with Jessica and her dad, I was calling him Jake, and then I felt terrible because I've met him multiple times. So I'm glad that I'm getting this right now. So we were having technical difficulties, so we're going to put this all together so we're not all talking at the same time. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah. I've been in HVAC now for probably 7 years. I was a mechanic my entire life before that. I'd worked at a company prior from owning my own business. I've owned my business now for 3 years. So I've been in the industry quite a while. It's been something that's definitely, I fell into it by accident, but it's been something I've been very grateful for because it actually has been very rewarding and a very interesting process.
Jessica was telling me about your making custom ductwork, so that makes sense as coming from a mechanical background.
Yeah, so I grew up. My dad had owned and still does own his own triaxle dump truck hauling company. So I'd always grew up in the garage helping my dad in the garage with that. And then I had raced motorcycles. My past life is I raced motorcycles for 20 years, and I raced professionally for 10 years. So I'd quit racing professionally to then quit my job and start my business full time. But I had built all my race bikes and all my race engines, so it's very mechanical aspect. So when I want to get a piece of ductwork made, I can see what I want and I can lay that onto a 2-dimension piece of paper with all the measurements I need, and it always comes out perfect. Unless obviously we all make a mistake or we forget something in the way. But being mechanical in the HVAC world, if you're mechanical and you can understand and read and learn, it's a very, very good trade to get into, and it's also, from a business standpoint, it does pay pretty well as well.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your company.
I've been in business for 3 years now. When I quit my job and started my business full time, I did a little bit on the side before that, just side work on weekends, weekdays, stuff like that. And it's really hard to grow a business like that. So when I finally decided to make the jump and do it full time, I went for it. It was in January. I had set a goal. I wanted to gross for the year, and I tripled that goal in my first year. So I was completely
that's
swamped.
Exciting.
Yeah, it was great. I could not ask for anything better as far as my business, and I have a full-time employee now. Looking for another full-time employee. I'm very, very particular in the work I do. I tend to have very good clientele that require a very fine detail. So I'm very picky, to say the least, on the employees I have and the work that's completed. So it's kind of hard to, trust somebody to go out and represent a company. But in the same sense, you just got to keep working and find the right guy that can help you do that. But yeah, the company, it grows as fast as I let it. I've been very fortunate that anytime I think I'm slowing up, I put out a couple posts on Instagram, call somebody, or it gets hot out like it did, The phone just keeps ringing. I jinx myself every week where I say, hey, I'm going to leave Monday and Tuesday open. I'd like to get done a little bit early and, go ride my bike, go take my daughter fishing or, do something with the family. And I'll get slammed first thing Monday morning or, middle of the day, I'll just get slammed with 4 more no AC calls. Or I'll get a new customer calls me, wants a project bid on, or it just never stops. So
that is true. Yeah, it's hard to have that balance. I know that I am not balanced. I tend to go towards work.
Right, and when you're in business and you're focused and you're driven and you want to accomplish as much as you can, you take on as much as you can. Even if you probably can't get it all done, you still will take it on. And you will figure out a way to get that all done.
Yeah.
So it's one of those good things where when those really bad jobs come in that you really don't want, you don't have to take them. And it's nice to be able to be in a position where you can run your business the way you want and provide a good service and everyone's happy, and then that's how it is.
Yeah, that is definitely a blessing when you can choose who you're working for. I definitely agree with that. So you work primarily in the Chester County area, is that correct?
Yeah, I did a lot of work in Chester County, Southern Chester County, some Delaware County, not as much Delaware County, but I still do work in Delaware County.
Okay.
Mainly Chester County. I do obviously work for Jessica White Chimneys, so that's Lancaster County. That's right over the border. or I guess not right over, but it's pretty close. Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah. So, and then you said that you primarily work on older stone homes. Is that correct? Yeah. So, my background at the prior company I used to work for, we had done a ton of historical work, ton of Unico systems, ton of stone, old 1700 stone farmhouses. I still obviously do that now. White Chimneys is an example of their barn with the main house there and both houses there. It's something with an old home that it's always a big, giant puzzle. Yeah. And the customer is the one who tells you what pieces that they're, in this case, they're okay seeing. It's always, you want to make everything invisible. You don't want to see anything. And which I understand. So it's always I love the so what's the word for it? When you have it's like you have to obviously think about it, but it's the challenge, the mental challenge of laying a system out that will both work 100% properly and is also as aesthetically pleasing as the customer is obviously requiring, or as I'm requiring. Sometimes I'm a worse critic than anyone else. But,
I think that's typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that there's challenges with working in an older building that you don't have in like a newer building, a more modern building, or are existing buildings pretty much the same? Like if it's already existing, you still have to kind of retrofit.
Yes. When we're talking retrofits, so say we have a house that has no AC. It depends on the home. So if it's an old stone 1800s home, I know I'm doing Unico. We can hide the ductwork in a way that won't be as intrusive. You can fish the high velocity feeds across the ceiling, and when it's done properly, you don't hear it, and the customer is 100% happy. If it's a mid 1900s and later built home, usually we have an attic we can work in or an open basement. We can run main ductwork into a conventional system, but each house is its own issue per se, or its own puzzle, I guess you could call it.
Every there's similarities, but everyone's a little bit different. Yeah.
Yep. But having those tools and having those different ideas for homes, it provides a much better service and a final product to the customer. I've seen conventional systems with large ductwork jammed into an 1800s house, and they end up with all these boxed out walls, all these soffits in the home. The systems don't work properly, and it just really ruins the home. And it's one of those things it's unfortunate, that's all.
Yeah, no, and I've seen that too, and it's ugly, and it's like, did nobody think about this when they were doing it?
They didn't hire someone like yourself. They didn't hire a good architect and somebody that understands historic design.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. So, and the reason that Jessica had kind of brought you into the podcast was that we were talking about the air filtration. I usually say air infiltration when I'm talking about winter or weatherizing a house, but we're talking about the air filtration system that you install. So, talk to me a little bit about it. You know, how does it work? What is it? Because I know right now everybody's kind of worried about their indoor air quality.
Yes, I've been installing RGF, the company that does these UV lights. I've been installing their lights for at least the last 5 years. I've had a lot of success in office buildings with employees that would come in and they something in the building was agitating them. They'd making them cough. We'd come in, we install UV lights in every HVAC system in the building, so it was treating every cubic inch of the air in the building. And we do that while they're on vacation, and when they come back, they didn't have any issues, they didn't have any coughing or anything. So something was in the air that was bothering them, and the UV light was able to eliminate it. That is when I knew that this light actually worked and was actually a reputable product.
Right.
And then doing more research, when someone has coliform in their well water, that's it's a runoff, typically from farms, rampant, that requires UV light. You need to bleach your well, and then you put a UV light in to maintain and kill that bacteria. So UV obviously kills germs and kills bacteria. A UV light does the same thing but filters your air. So I've been installing them, like I said, for the last 5 years, and all their products are third-party tested. They're all tested to kill numerous viruses, mold spores, bacteria, sneeze germs within 3 feet. Another big key point is that they advertise is schools that have implemented their UV light have seen a 20% drop in attendance loss. Now, obviously predated to what's going on now.
Right.
But the schools that took the initiative in the past, it obviously paid off with less students missing class due to being sick.
Yeah, that when I saw that, I thought that was pretty impressive too. When we post this on the website, I'll make sure that we put a link to that site too, so that people can see those videos. Because I was not familiar with this system before I started doing research for the podcast, and I was very impressed watching those videos and seeing those statistics also. So does it go into? It has to be? I'm assuming a forced air system.
Yeah, so it has to be a forced air system, or any type of system that's circulating the air in the home, which is obviously only a forced air system.
Right.
I wouldn't install it in an ERV or an energy. Anyone that's familiar with the fresh air system in the home, but if a home has
just like a ventilation system, is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah, so homes that are spray foam are very tight as far as their air infiltration of the building. They'll install an energy recovery installation, which brings in fresh air based upon a calculated standard. You wouldn't install UV light in that, because when you have one of those systems, you have a forced air or forced cooling system. So it would go in any residential HVAC system, so heating and cooling system. It will go in the ductwork, so any air that passes by it would be filtered by the UV light. So the entire home, anywhere in the home that is conditioned by the heating and cooling system would be then treated with the UV light. And then in a commercial environment, it goes in the rooftop unit that's on the roof that also does the same thing. So it's both residential and commercial as far as the products they have for UV lights.
It's just a little bit of a different application.
Correct.
So, and have they? I don't know the answer to this. Have they tested it on the COVID-19, or is that? I know that they've tested it on things that are very similar, like the SARS and the MARS, but I didn't know if they had tested it on that yet, or have you seen that?
So the no one's going to say, hey, it kills COVID-19.
Right.
They're live.
Yeah. Right.
So RGF has made machines that were approved to kill everything on a mask. So doctors and frontline workers could turn in those masks, those reusable masks that are not supposed to be reused.
Right.
They could turn those masks in. They'd run them through this machine, quick conveyor belt through the machine, and they were doing 30,000 masks a day and killing everything on the mask including any coronavirus,
Right.
with the same technology that's put into the UV lights that I'm installing and that you install into the air ductwork.
Yeah. So I guess that it makes the indoor safer. It doesn't make it completely, it doesn't make it that it would be completely safe, but it makes it much safer than if you don't have anything to purify the air. Is that what you'd probably say? Yeah.
I would definitely say that. So,
yeah.
if it's, things you don't go out and tell people because people could worry, but if you look up how long a saliva particle lasts in the air,
Mm-hmm.
if you laugh, if you cough,
Right.
it's 3 to 4 or 5 minutes, and that's a long time. Cough and then put a stopwatch and see how many times you walk through that or how many times someone else will walk through that.
Yeah.
So having a system in your home, in your school, or a business, or any grocery store, anywhere, that restaurants that have a system that it sucks that air up and treats it, it's going to obviously drastically lower the chance of something getting someone else sick, no matter what it is.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
COVID, right, not just COVID-19, but the flu, anything that's going to get somebody sick. Having that filtered ability, because you can take the precautions, social distance, wear masks, but the chance of the matter is when you sit down and eat, you're taking your mask off, and there's only so much you can take. So taking extra precautions is just going to make a bad situation better is the whole goal.
Yeah. No, and I agree with that, and I think that this is going to have to be the trend if we get to any kind of normal baseline, because it's great that you can eat outside now, but I keep thinking I feel terrible for the restaurants. Really, I feel very fortunate that that we haven't been impacted, but now they can turn their parking lots into dining, and they can have people outside. But what are they going to do in a few months when it's cold? People aren't going to do that.
Right.
And I think that we do need to have some solutions that mitigate the risk. It might not take it away completely, but I agree that I think this makes sense. So,
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. So is there anything that you wanted to share that maybe I forgot to ask you, or that you wanted that you thought about when we were talking?
Not that it comes offhand.
Okay.
It's along with the UV light treating viruses and mold spores, E. coli, swine flu, all these different flus that they were able to test on. It also helps with pet odor, dander. It changes a lot of times it ionizes the bacteria or the particles as it passes. So it neutralizes the dust, the dander, stuff like that. So it does help homes to have a smell. RGS makes a new product. It's an LED UV light that has a washable ballast in it, and it's rated for smoking rooms and cigar rooms.
Yeah.
So you can almost smoke into the ductwork. Now, I did not test this because I'm not a smoker. I've heard this from people that I know, and part of me wants to find somebody who is a smoker and test it. But they say you can breathe into it, smoke into the return of the unit, and you can't smell it after it comes out of the unit. Now, I would love to test that.
Right.
But obviously, I'm not promoting anyone smoking because that is not
just to try it out.
But it is something. There's other, daily life events that this UV light would treat other than bacteria and viruses.
Right. Yeah, and the dust and dander really appeals to me. we have a Siberian Husky, and she is in full shed mode right now.
Yeah, I have 3 Czech Shepherds, and my wife gives them a bath once a day, and my yard is looking like more hair than it is grass at the moment.
Well, that's what I do. I brush her outside, and then I hope that the birds take it away to make their nest.
Yeah, exactly. And then you end up with a bird's nest somewhere else.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. So how can someone contact you?
So they can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram. Facebook is Shoemaker Heating and Cooling. Instagram is Shoemaker HVAC. those are the two methods to get a hold of me now, or they can Google my company. I have great
Okay.
Google reviews, tons of pictures on all accounts. I take a lot of pride in my work. I post nothing but the work I do. I was thinking the other day that a lot of these big companies that spend tons of advertising, they always just post the generic, somebody wearing a winter jacket or somebody hot,
Right.
somebody cold. They don't post the work they do because usually the work they do is not pretty. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
say that and I laugh about it and I say, but I have had so many customers that don't know anything about their HVAC system. They wouldn't know what in the world they're looking at, and that is completely okay. That's why they hired me, obviously, and they tell me how great it looks or how it looks like art. So,
That's great. Yeah, that's funny because I know that like there's even like a preservation grant in for nonprofits. Only nonprofits can apply for it, I believe, in Lancaster County. And the person that funded it actually said this is for like the furnaces and stuff that nobody wants to give you money when you're fundraising for. but it's true. Like the stuff that you don't see isn't the fun stuff to donate money to.
right, exactly.
Yeah, but
So,
I think it's important to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and let people see how it all comes together because people are interested in it, even if they don't know how to do it themselves.
absolutely, and the systems
Yeah.
that I install, more so with like I really like hydronic systems. So you have all the nice, beautiful copper piping in the room. Everything's always super organized, very laid out, very even. It's
Right.
I'm very easy to say that lightly. But I can always, when the system's so neat and organized, the customer can usually understand what's going on by just walking them through it real quick. And then if there's ever an issue, I usually can diagnose a lot of stuff over the phone with the customer by having them check a couple different points on the system, just by visual.
Right.
And at least help when you're lucky and it's Saturday night at 10 o'clock, sometimes you can get their heat back on or get their AC back on if it's in the middle of the day.
Right.
But in terms of getting a hold of me, though, I am working on a website. I do own the domain at shoemaker-hvac.com. The website's not up and going yet, but that will be another form or method to get a hold of me.
Oh, we'll list it on. Is it a .com?
It's a .com.
It's .com. Okay, we'll list it on the website where we post the podcast. We'll list it so that people, if they're listening a little bit later, once it's up, they can go to it from there.
No worries.
So, okay, well, thank you very much. I enjoyed our talk. I feel like I learned some things about the system and you and your company.
Thank you. Me as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.